Welcome to Asian Book Club, where we highlight Asian and Asian American authors. We are your hosts,
Jamae and Sabangan.
And I'm Stephen Park. And today we come at you with our third read of Molto by Cindy Fazzi. And in this book, what we're noticing is Domingo, who's the main character, and he is often talking about how he is trying to assimilate into American and white culture.
Mm-hmm.
He's even writing a book about how others can do the same thing.
Right.
And that kind of got me to thinking, because that characteristic makes me feel so sad about Domingo. I think it's something that I talked about in the first read of this book, even just how he changed his name to Sunday.
Right.
But on the other end of things, there was recently, I think it was about a month ago, maybe a month and a half ago, that a baseball player was just recently signed for the largest contract in American sports, ever.
Mm-hmm.
He's gonna make $700 million in a 10-year span, and it's money that the next American professional sports star that is making the second amount of money is at about $300 million less, and it's a football quarterback, Patrick Mahomes. So it is a massive amount of money. On top of that, we have newer and newer actors and people coming out that are also Asian, like Shang-Chi, who is Simu Liu, and Michelle Yeoh,
yes,
who's doing all these different roles now.
Who's been doing different roles, but just coming into a new age of herself.
Right, and it's a different era because I feel like we all kind of grew up wanting to, at one point, be a white man. Like, there was someone I looked up to or someone that I wanted to be, whether it was a baseball player, a football player, an actor, a something that was a white male. And I was like, oh, that'd be so cool. Like, I wanted to be Batman or Superman, right? Or like the portrayals of different defense or heroes. And I was like, oh, that's what I wanted to be. And it was usually portrayed as a white man.
In the U.S., definitely.
Yeah.
I think on Guam, the way I grew up, I personally never wanted to be a white man, or I didn't aspire to be any of the superheroes, but I definitely noticed the privilege that they had and how much stardom there was in being a white person.
Well, okay, let me put it this way then. Something less large in character. But growing up, one of the things that my parents wanted me to aspire to be, so I then was chasing it for a while, was a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
My image of a doctor for a long time was a white male. I think even if you say, for the kids that are saying that, oh, I want to be a president, before Barack Obama, that was a white male.
Fair.
I guess that's what I more mean by, it seems that most people at one point in their life, whether you're a female that wants to be president and want the job, that was usually owned by the white male. I think now, like I said, with those up-and-coming stars, it's really interesting to see people start to transition and say, like, Shohei Ohtani, like, there are white kids out there now that are saying, I want to play baseball like Shohei Ohtani. That's such a transition and such a cool change to see. And I think it really goes into the possibility of how much the world can change. I'm not going to say has changed, because if we still see the racism in the world, it's still massive and it's not fixed. But I think we can start to see maybe the little twists and shifts in not necessarily the superficial, but maybe the deeper mindset of how we can integrate our cultures without feeling like we need to be a certain stereotype.
For sure. Do you think the change in zeitgeist is mostly in the U.S. or is it in the world at large?
Maybe it's at large, but I am thinking more in the U.S. because it's what I think of growing up.
For sure.
I mean, there was one other person that kind of did that, which was Bruce Lee. Everyone wanted to be Bruce Lee. I mean, the guy at the cemetery wanted to be Bruce Lee.
I was going to say, there are still people who want to be Bruce Lee.
I mean, there's a whole rap group, Wu-Tang Clan, who do a lot of stuff based around that kung fu type genre movie, which was led by Bruce Lee. So I don't think this is a new thing, but I think after certain eras, you would get one person and that would drop off. But I think we're seeing an uprise in the commonality of Asian people being outstanding, which it always was, but now it's being more accepted, maybe.
I think it's being more recognized now, for sure.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I just thought that was really interesting. It's still one of the viewpoints that I am hoping will change from Domingo's aspect of him maybe transitioning to not wanting to be American, but finally finding it in himself to admire his own culture and his background. But we'll see how it goes. We'll kind of get into the book soon, but before we do, let's get into our recommendation for the week.
Our recommendation for the week is Living Hyphen. Living Hyphen is a community and multimedia platform led by founder Justine Abigail, which explores what it means to live in between cultures. I know them from their magazine releases, but they're also known for their writing workshops and cultural programming. Their most recent issue, 2.2, Healing Across Generations, is available now. Learn more about their work via Instagram at Living Hyphen or through their website at livinghyphen.ca.
Yep, that's Canada.
That is Canada.
And that is our recommendation for the week. Alright, so read 3 of Molto by Cindy Fazzi. This is read 3 of 4. What do we know so far?
So, last week we learned that Cutter's very shady.
He's been shady.
Christian's very little help.
He's been of little help.
For sure. And Tess has had the most info all along.
Yeah. Which has been kind of pulled out of her in little bits.
Yes, without her wanting to share those bits of information.
Right. And so this week we have read chapters 19 through 28, and those were pages 141 to 213 for those following along in the physical book. So this week we are kind of just continuing on in the story. We're still figuring out what's happening with Monica and what's happened with Monica.
Yep.
At the point that she was in that predicament of trying to donate her kidney to her father, General Reed.
Yes, and this was the second hunt of Monica.
Right. So let's start there, because we are no longer concerned about the first instance in which Domingo catches Monica, because that was pretty straightforward. He let her go. That was that.
Right.
This time it is in 2008, and Domingo has catched Monica. This was from our past read. He has brought her to this hospital, and where we left off last time is that she is in this hospital ready to go through surgery so that she can have her kidney removed to give to General Reed.
Right, and she all of a sudden goes missing.
Right.
And by missing, this just means that she's hiding, which we find out in this read.
Right.
She's been hiding. Domingo and Max are trying to find her, and they find her in a room, and they're kind of cornered.
Right.
At this point in the book, I was wondering what kind of miraculousness is going to happen for them to get out of this situation. But instead of them getting out of the situation, besides Max jumps out the window.
Yeah.
And lives, I guess, because there's nothing out there when they look out.
Yeah, because it sounds like he jumped out the 3rd floor.
Yes.
And the next time someone looked out the window, which was Savannah, he was gone, and it wasn't like his body was left over or anything.
Right. So he must have survived that jump.
Yeah.
So that means that Domingo and Monica are cornered. They're brought in to see General Reed. And General Reed tells Monica what his true reason for having her there is.
Well, at this point, they had the option to escape as well. They were facing the surgeon, or the person that was kind of working around the events of the surgery.
Right, orchestrating the entire operation.
Right. And because this is a hospital and this is an optional surgery, it's not like they could have been held against their will.
Or at least Monica couldn't have been held against her will.
Right. Well, I don't think Domingo could have either, because he didn't necessarily do anything wrong.
Right. Fair. I was going to say that because there's so much money involved, and I don't know. I doubt you can hold a bounty hunter hostage, but who knows what General Reed can do.
Well, he can decide to not pay him, but he can't just hold him.
Fair.
Because then that's a hostage situation.
Right.
So they have decided to go and talk to General Reed. And did General Reed actually tell them the whole thing? I feel like what happened was that I feel like Domingo spilled the beans because Mary Reed was there and said, I'm not going to let you kill Monica. So I don't feel like General Reed actually gave the story. I think it was Domingo that let the cat out of the bag.
I think you're right. Not that General Reed was the one to give the news, but General Reed didn't deny what Domingo was saying.
Yeah, because Domingo was right. I mean,
Yeah.
General Reed was trying to kill Monica.
And General Reed tried to rationalize this by asking Monica, what is your purpose?
Right.
Besides to give me your life.
Right. And so I think that's where it left off, right? Like, that was the end of our read.
2008, yes.
Yeah, so the 2008 read was kind of sprinkled in throughout this read that we did. Mm-hmm. But that's where chapter 28 had ended. Mm-hmm. And so we don't actually know what has officially happened in that room after that incident where Monica finds out that General Reed was trying to kill her.
Right, and I don't think it's over either, because at this point, Monica is still in their presence, and Domingo hasn't had a chance to, quote-unquote, lose her yet.
Right. But we do know that Monica survives because she's in the present.
Yes.
Let's talk more about the present, because we also knew from our last read that Domingo was going to get very important information from Tess Chua.
Yes. The last piece of information that Tess has left for Domingo, she gives because Domingo, like we talked about in the last episode, Domingo agrees to not pass along the information to Mary Reed.
Right. He wasn't going to turn in Monica to Mary Reed.
Right.
Even though that was his original hire as the bounty hunter.
Right.
But Domingo's thought process was, I'll find an intermediate where I can make Tess happy, because Tess's whole goal is to protect Monica, and Domingo's goal is
to
in
find
thought.
her.
Well, not only to find her, but in thought, it's to help Monica get citizenship and freedom, because he believes that Mary Reed is after that as well.
Right.
So Domingo is able to squeeze every last bit out of Tess Chua and really gets every single information that he needs.
Right, and the information that he needed from Tess is who Monica's last employer was.
Right, and where she worked, like where she's going to be. And the employer was the biggest part that Tess eventually gives away.
Yes.
Which should have been a sign. I did not see the next thing that was coming.
I didn't see the next thing coming either, and I didn't think that this was going to be the last bit of information she had, but I guess it is now because plot twists.
Yeah, and for anyone that's squeamish around death or things like that, that's the plot twist, so maybe shun away for like the next 30 seconds.
Yeah.
But the conversation that was had was at a subway station, and as Domingo's walking away and Tess is waiting for the subway, Domingo hears the incident in which Tess is thrown onto the subway tracks and murdered. Domingo remembers a certain character that was cross-eyed. I don't remember what he calls them.
He calls him Duling. Duling means cross-eyed in Tagalog.
Yeah, so he calls him Duling, and he is almost positive that this person is the killer. Actually, I would say he is almost overly sure that Duling is the killer.
Right. I mean, all the little clues point to this one person as being the killer.
Right. So this is the end of Tess Chua and Domingo's line of information about Monica. R.I.P. Tess, I guess. I don't know. I really didn't think this was going to happen.
I didn't either. It really took me by surprise. I thought she was going to be injured, yes, but I definitely didn't see her death coming.
Yeah. So Domingo is now searching out this evidence, and so he goes to San Francisco, and he's doing his own research and his own investigation on where Monica might be.
Right, and he's doing all these little dot connections from the nursing home to the supervisor to the fan club to the little members of these fan clubs.
Yeah, all the old ladies that he's talking to.
Yes.
He's like doing all these like bingo and old lady things too.
Bingo, painting coasters, making these cutouts.
Yeah, just so that he can get in with them to get a little bit more information. And it kind of works. He is able to find out more about Monica's past, but also finds out about Galina.
Yes, Galina Duboff.
Yeah, so she is kind of the main reason why Amari Penn might be incorporated into Monica's life, because she was one of the biggest fans of Amari Penn.
Yes.
And when she passed away of natural causes, it seemed like the whole nursing home got together to try to fulfill that wish of meeting Amari Penn.
Right.
And so we know that Monica was last seen by Amari Penn, And this seems to be the reason why they were connected.
Mm-hmm.
But we still don't know what the whole situation is, why they actually met up, what that meetup was like. So this is kind of the open-ended situation that we're left with. Is, where's Monica? Is she alive? Is Domingo gonna find her?
What does Amari have to do with Monica's disappearance?
Right. So that kind of leads us into our thoughts on where this story is. I mean, clearly the story has become a mystery. It's no longer just a thriller or a suspense. It's like, what is actually happening in the story? And the follow-up to that is, we don't know if it's a murder. We don't know if it's kidnapping. We don't know if Monica's running away. Like, we can't even say that it's a killer thriller or something. Like, it's something that we're just trying to figure out.
How has the suspense felt for you up till now?
I felt like maybe it's suspenseful, but the writing is so good that I don't feel suspense. I just feel kind of drawn in. Like, I feel like all these chapters are just flying by.
Right.
So I don't feel like this stunned presence. If I'm watching a scary movie, you know how there's that scene where the music gets really, like, build up quiet, and then you're seeing them creep through a hallway.
Right.
Like, for me, that's a thought of suspense.
I see.
But in this, it just feels like we're kind of like zooming through the scene, like almost like a Disney ride where you're on this cart and it's just taking you through the scenes.
Totally. I feel similarly in that I don't have that gnawing feeling that you have in many suspense thriller horror shows or horror type readings. But instead, the suspense that I feel is the one that's like, what's going to happen next? Now that Tess is gone, who's going to be his insider to provide him information? Right.
Which he might not have any anymore. I don't think anyone really knows what's going on because Tess was the last person to lead him to San Francisco. If we look at Cutter and we look at Christian, neither of them knew even up to this point where Monica was.
Right, exactly.
So I think from here it's just all investigation.
And it's all pointing to Amari Penn.
Right. Do you think that Monica might be alive?
So that's what I started wondering. Like, is she going to be found alive? Is she going to be found dead? Is she going to be found at all? I have a sneaking suspicion that she's not alive.
Okay. Because I think she might still be alive. I think actually that she is still alive. The question for me is she even kidnapped? Or is she running away?
I see.
I think that's the hard part with this current story. It's not a bad hard part, but just trying to figure out what Monica's story really is. Because what is her motive at this point? Like, no one knows what's in her brain or what she's going through, why she's running away. We just know that she's missing, and this relationship with Christian didn't work out.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if... I'm, like, almost even in that feeling that, is Amari Penn even relevant to this story? Like, is he even a person that is of interest? Or is this kind of, like, a dead-end trail that's going to lead Domingo maybe to the next hint that turns him around and hopefully then finds Monica?
I see. I see where you're coming from. I am on the opposite end. I'm thinking that Amari Penn is such a key person in this story that all the arrows point to him, and because of that, he's the one who unalived her.
Unalived her.
Yes.
Okay. So, did something with her. Yeah, I mean, I'm not great at mysteries. Honestly, I haven't read a lot of mystery books. I'm not someone that's also read thrillers too much. So this is definitely a different aspect of things. And I want to say I'm really good at piecing together puzzles. But with these books, not just this one, but I find it really difficult to even find puzzle pieces. So for me, I always just stay confused. Like, even when we watch movies, I'm just always confused. And then when the ending happens, I'm like, oh, that was a nice surprise. So that's what I feel like I'm going to get with this book. I think that question that you brought up last week, where you asked if Domingo was a good detective, I now fully believe that he is a good detective. I think I said, I was like, he might be a good detective, or I can't remember what I said exactly last week, but I mean, the way that he not only approaches people and not only gets information from people, but the fact that he's so honest, he never really lies to anybody.
No.
He does deceive people in certain ways and kind of like butters them up and says, like, I guess he lies in the sense of like, I am a real estate agent or something like that. But when someone truly asks him, like, who are you? He never changes his name.
He doesn't change what his job title is.
Yeah. And so I feel like Domingo's doing a great job of trying to figure this all out, but I also feel like this is a massive mess.
It is a mess, despite his detective work being on point. What are some things or characteristics that you find curious or interesting about Domingo?
I don't know if this is necessarily curious or interesting, but it's that part that I just mentioned. Like, I love that he's such an honest person, and he seems like a very hard worker.
Definitely.
I think he's very straightforward, even moments where he's doing things that are maybe a little bit under the table, like when he went with Cutter to the strip club and then like left Cutter with $300 to like spend on whatever.
Right.
He still does it in a seemingly honest way, and I really like that about Domingo.
For sure, for sure. When I brought up this question, I was thinking about two particular chapters in which he starts off by writing in his notebook. The first chapter, he talks about anchor babies, and the next chapter, he talks about birth tourism. And although he works for very wealthy folks, he somehow seems to hate rich people. Because when he talks about anchor babies, he approaches it with a sense of like, we should be thinking well about them. They're not gonna all of a sudden become citizens. They're not dragging along their parents because they want to. While with the birth tourism, which is fairly the same thing, it's giving birth in the United States soil in order to have a child with citizenship who will then give them naturalized citizenship in the future when they become adults. But with birth tourism, he gets so angry at the rich people who pay thousands of dollars in order to come here to give birth.
Right. And I think this is the part of him that is very much the person that grew up in the Philippines, the one that grew up without a lot of money and is a hard worker that's trying to make it by in America.
For sure.
I think this part is the truest part of him that hasn't been influenced by trying to fit into American society. And that's why I think his character is possibly going to come around into changing and developing. I think he isn't the same Domingo that's writing this book now when we get to the last part of this read.
Fair.
Yeah. And speaking of which, we'll get to that last part of the read as we go into our next episode. So that is going to be chapters 29 through 38.
For everyone.
So that's to the end of the book. For people with the physical copy, that's going to be pages 214 through 280.
So what are your predictions?
My predictions are that Amari Penn, I think, is a dead end. I don't think he actually has anything to do with physically controlling or manipulating the fact that Monica is missing. I think maybe there was a conversation in which Monica then veers off and tries to go a different route, but I don't think Amari Penn is someone who may have, what did you say, unalived?
Yes.
Yeah, unalived Monica, or I don't think he's kidnapped her, but something in that conversation I think steered her away. I do think that Domingo is going to find Monica, and I think this journey of finding Monica and being in this whole situation is going to change Domingo and give him a realization that he wants to help illegal immigrants in a different way, maybe. And so maybe have him change his career.
Okay, that's a big aspiration for the end of this book. So what you're saying is that all this focus on Amari Penn is just smoke and mirrors. Gotcha. I'm thinking the opposite. I think Amari Penn does have something to do with Monica's disappearance, whether it is unaliving or just kidnapping. I think, though, whether or not Monica is dead or alive, someone is going to die at the end of this book.
Do you think maybe Amari Penn called the immigration agency on Monica?
It's possible.
Because that seems very Amari Penn-ish.
Right. It seems like it's in his character because he dislikes immigrants, especially those who are undocumented.
Right. That'd be such an anticlimactic ending, though.
It would be.
For Domingo to go on this massive journey where he starts off by thinking that Monica is in the Philippines. And then he goes around to all these people and, like, kicks and punches and, like, does all these things to all these people, chases her down to San Francisco, finds all these other people that he does like pottery and knitting with, yes. And then finds Amari Penn, and he's like, oh, she's just in Manila, and then has to fly to Manila and find her again. Yeah, I feel like that's not the situation, but I can see how Amari Penn could
do
be
something like that.
The unaliver and sentenced to unaliving. But we won't know until we read the book.
Yes. So
follow along with us. If you have any thoughts on where you think the story is going to go, how can people reach us?
You can email us at asianbookclubpod@gmail.com, or you can join the conversation on Instagram at asianbookclubpod.
Yep, and you can also find us at our website, which is asianbookclubpod.com, which features our bookstore, which has books that we've read, books that we're currently reading, and books that we plan to read in the future.
And a great way to support us is to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast.
Yep. Otherwise, make sure to be happy, be healthy, and read a book.
Ingat. Bye.